Dummy Switch Pod, unfiltered rugby chat, and
Yes,
we're
sir.
back. I'm back with my
Mhm.
my co-host Chris. How are you?
I'm good, Courts. How are you doing, boy?
I'm I'm good myself. Let's jump in. Let's jump in this pool.
Let's get
Uh,
to it.
Bulls versus Pumas. Bulls at home, a very green Loftus Versfeld. Chris
Hmm.
Smith replacing Mornay Steyn. A Bulls team waiting to be crowned champions.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to get into them first.
Yeah, look, I think it was a given, we called it that the Bulls, they're ready to be crowned champions. And the game told, particularly that first half, the way that they played, the forwards stood up, they really outmuscled the Pumas. And yeah, a kind of expected results, I think they're on a good trajectory as a team. And yeah, but credit to the Pumas, for the second half performance that they gave. But that first off, I think they'd be very concerned about that. But with that, I think it was more really a belief thing than than a coaching thing and a talent the issue. That's just from our perspective.
Yeah, they couldn't deal with the Bulls in the first half. They couldn't maintain any phase play. They couldn't maintain any sort of possession in the
Mm.
Bulls half, let alone in their own. I mean, it was a struggle majorly for them. It just kept piling on and on, and the Bulls were on top of them.
Yeah, they were all over them. I think they were just being bullied all over the park. And again, the Bulls are just playing to their strengths. Traditional strengths, and I mean that's Jake White's sort of. That's really his cocktail. Where big, strong forwards, set piece, solid. Dominated scrum, dominated line out, dominating the breakdowns. And usually the result does go your way when you take opportunities, and that's what the Bulls did in the first half. They took the opportunities that were there for them because at the same time they were allowed to play because the Pumas couldn't physically match them in that respect. And I mean, you saw that with the way that guys like Marco van Staden, he was really big for the Bulls. I think out of all the sort of that loose trio, he stood out, and he's been standing out for the past few weeks. Uh, Marco van Staden, uh, and and Dwight Vermeulen, we know what we get from him. He's a seasoned campaigner,
Yeah.
seasoned Springbok. So again, it's always the old adage: it starts up front, and that's where it was won for the Bulls up front in the first half. I must say, because the second half, the Pumas did show some fight, and they showed, they effectively won that second half 5-0. Keeping the Bulls scoreless, which is I think they can be proud of themselves for doing that. But it's a matter of how do they take that forward into the Currie Cup competition, because they can't have first halves like that for many games going forward.
But I mean, they
Otherwise,
did say they had about 11 players in isolation.
mm,
The week before this game. So I mean, it goes to show, especially in the defensive structures,
yeah,
they were making those hits, but constantly offside didn't really help their cause. And
yeah,
it just seemed to be a cycle where offside, penalty, maul, offside,
yeah,
penalty, maul, and the Bulls just buried them with that one. Uh, I mean, they were just applying pressure at
yeah.
every single time they were applying that pressure. Seems like it was taking like three Pumas players tackle one Bulls player down. That go forward ball and backs against forwards try.
Yeah, and I mean that's what's going to happen. Guys are going to get pulled in. If you have three guys trying to tackle one guy, you become short on numbers. And we all know what these teams do. Some of them it's the tactics where they try to keep players out of the game as long as possible at the breakdown point. And the Pumas really struggle to really get their defensive system going. And as you mentioned, 11 players in isolation, that's disruption, for them. Of course they would have been disrupted, but at the same time there were some shining lights. Makondwana, for me, he was just tackling like a man possessed,
Yeah, big
and
hits.
big hits all around the park, and a guy like Willie Engelbrecht as well, strong carries, even putting Ono Boeta on his back, and that's no mean feat, and even Francois Klenon. So I think, the Pumas loose forwards, they did stick their hands up, and I think they have something going there It's just a
Even
matter
the
of finding.
backline, the thing is they've got a dangerous backline. They just couldn't set that platform to move from.
Yeah, and again, it's because their forwards weren't allowed to set that platform, particularly in that first half. You know, they were outplayed. They didn't have ball. All the balls at the Bulls, territories at the Bulls. You know, I think the one thing that I can say that annoyed me out of this game was actually the number of reset scrums. You know, look, I guess the referee didn't want to make a decision because of the slippery conditions as well. But I think at one point, close to the end, it's about 8 minutes from the 30th minute, about 8 minutes of scrumming, you know, of scrums and resets. So I don't quite enjoy that about that game, you know, and I think World Rugby, they need to really look at uh, even SA Rugby. I think they could have used the Super Rugby Unlocked or even the Currie Cup as a means to trial, you know, stopping the clock whenever there's a scrum, you know, and until the ball goes in, until the ball goes out, then you start the clock again, you know, because then the ball
I
is.
don't know. I don't know how I feel about that one, but my issue is what I'm noticing is you're either getting a situation where someone is really good at scrummaging. I mean, you look at a Kitsov,
Yeah.
and then someone that's like on that world class level. And there's a big gap between someone that's on that world class level and someone that's, let's say, on the bench for the opposing team.
Yeah.
You know, by the time they make those changes, you've got guys that are, you know, they're hanging on for dear life. Guys are getting folded because they can't,
Yeah.
you know, they can't deal, they can't hang. And I feel like, I don't know whether this is a depth issue in SA Rugby, whether, you know, the real guys, the real heavy guys, you know, the real top props are leaving, and you're getting this void, this hole where it's like these guys can't hang at this level.
Yeah.
Some of these
That's
guys, they can't hang at this level. I mean, a lot of guys are getting folded.
yeah, they are. That's actually an interesting take on that, quarters. You know, when you're looking at it, analyzing the depth that we actually have. You know, because yes, we have the guys there, but you know, I think a number of times the past few weeks we've been seeing a lot of props getting folded. You know, and that begs the question. You know, in terms of are they even ready enough to get to be at that level? You know, in terms of from a technique point of view and also from a strength point of view. You know, I think that's something to think about. It's an interesting point that you make there. You know, but again, you have to credit, you know, the Bulls. You know, the Bulls scrum was immense. Again, you know, they were all over. The forwards were just all over the Pumas. You know,
Nyakani had a good game.
he did. He had a field day. He really had a field day. But then Rono Kia as well is a young lock that's coming through. You know, for me, you know, he's been a very, very good lock forward in the Super Rugby Unlock competition, and it shows that okay, we at least have depth in the lock position. You know, and there's some pretty stiff competition coming through. You know, and then you know, looking at a guy like Ivan van Zyl, look, I've never really rated him, you know, from the time that he made his Springbok debut back in 2018. But from what I've seen is the way that he's grown as a player, and he just seems to have a different sort of level of confidence, which is good to see, because at the end of the day, it bodes well for South African rugby when we have a number of good players in each position, you know, pushing the limits. So for me,
Yeah,
I
like
think
you said,
overall,
locks, number nines. Those are places where we've got. I think Chris Smith even coming in at 10.
yeah,
The Greek was there's some tens around. Hookers not so much. I saw in this game as well. Uh, not great play.
yeah,
I think Engelbert put the Bulls hooker down, so I think he was another guy there.
yeah,
Wings as well. I mean, Aronsa looked quite assured. He looked quite assured on the ball. He's been a good
yes,
find this season. I mean, for me, he mirrors Angelo Davis quite a lot. I mean, they're a similar style of play. They both, you know, they stay within the field. They run onto the ball with a lot of intensity. You know, that ball's got energy. You know, they say that
yeah,
ball's got energy, and you can
yeah.
see it when they receive it. They just come alive, and it's good to see. It's good to see.
Yeah, and I mean, like you talk about Aronsa, I honestly, I can see him being a potential. a potential Springbok, I don't think he would look out of place. He looks calm, he looks assured in what he's doing. Physically he's got the ability. He's lethal. He's got lethal pace.
He
And
gave
as you say,
Obi a long day at the office.
and he did. And Obi just looks like he just lifts weights too much. And rugby's not played in the gym. And I mean, Obi doesn't have a step, and he was trying to step. Like every time he got the ball, I thought, okay, maybe he's gonna do something. I wanted that for him. I was like, maybe he's gonna do something, and he didn't do anything, and he didn't explode, he didn't have that energy that you're talking about, and for me that's just, it's rather unfortunate, but
yeah, I don't think he had a good day at the office. There was one point where I think he was pleading with the referee, saying that he didn't get a chance to place it, and she just said to him, walk away. And I don't think, it wasn't his day. It wasn't his day. But I mean, that's just, it's a Bulls team. It's a Bulls team. It's Jake White. Like I've come on here and said before, he's like Jose Mourinho, where it's they're gonna make changes, they're gonna win, but it's not necessarily gonna be very entertaining at all. They get the results, and that's exactly what he's done. Bulls, Super Rugby Unlocked champions, as boring as ever, but as victorious as ever.
Yeah, that's true, and that's what you're gonna get. That's what you expect from a Jake White led team. I think we all know what he's about. He's really about that forward dominance, and it shows in the type of players that he has in his locker room. And look, it's good, I guess, for him and for the Bulls. It'll be good to see the Bulls coming back to their glory days. It can only bode well for South African rugby, with the Bulls becoming strong again. And I think, one thing that I'd like to see is to see that sort of competition be across the board, where at every single union, on any given weekend or any given Saturday, that any team can beat any team, and that's when we can truly say South African rugby is in a strong position, as opposed to having one dominant team all the time, and the likes of the Lions, the Stormers, even the Sharks, they have the opportunity to step up, particularly from a pack perspective, because that's where it all starts for me.
Yeah,
is in the pack, and even the Cheetahs. Let's not forget the Cheetahs.
1 through to 5, Jake made sure. He made sure.
Yeah, he did. And I mean, even the guys that he has on the bench, a guy like Sintu Manjesi coming through, I'm just happy for him, because he's grown from the early parts of the competition, where he was making mistakes when he was coming off the bench, giving away silly penalties, costing, sort of putting his team under pressure, to the past couple of weeks. So he's coming on, making an impact immediately, whether that be stealing a line-out ball, disrupting a maul, things like that. And for me, I just want to see him grow more, in that Bulls team. And look, for him, hopefully it's just onwards and upwards for him.
Yeah, it must be said for the Pumas, they couldn't build phase play in the first half. They really struggled, but credit to them, second half, being able to build more phases. And for me, I credit them for keeping it within 20. I mean, it looked like the Bulls were really going to run away with this one, but they did their best. They did their best, especially, I mean, given the circumstances, I can't fault the guys. I mean, they've got a dangerous back line. They just need to release those guys. And I mean, even going to what you said about the depth in SA Rugby, a lot of these guys wouldn't look out of place on a Bull side.
They really wouldn't, And for me, that's what I always go back to what I alluded to earlier about the Pumas. I think it's really a belief thing for me, because to come out in the second half and then keep the ball scoreless and win the second half 5-0, yes, it's a moral victory, but at the end of it, when you really, really look at it down to the bone, to me, it just seems like it's a belief thing, where the guys just, unions and guys that play for teams like the Pumas, teams like the Griquas, they really need to believe more in themselves and their abilities, and that's only when we'll see the true depth of South African rugby, is in that competition, when guys really believe. Because at some point, if we had to look at it, at some point, all these players would have followed the same sort of player pathway, from a either Craven Week perspective or representative teams. And some would have played together, some would have already played against each other, throughout the age group. So it's a matter of, what's the difference? Yes, perhaps from a tactical point of view, maybe the coaching difference, but at the end of it all, it's a 23 against a 23, and on the day, it's all about, your belief and your attitude. And I think these guys, like the Pumas, they just need to, if they find that balance in themselves and that belief, like you say, they wouldn't look, a lot of these guys wouldn't look out of place in a Bulls jersey. They really wouldn't, and it would be interesting if we had to put that scenario where we have those guys, switch jerseys and see how they'll perform, I bet
especially
8 out of 10
the
times.
backline for me. Especially the backline for me. I mean, you look Van der Bank, you look at Cronje.
Yeah.
I mean, Ginter Smarts. That backline they've got. I mean, Boshoff was the Tuck's main man. So I mean, a lot of these guys, as you say, same pathway, just different outcomes. And I mean, we'll see how things go when more time is given. I can't fault them too much with that 11 guys in isolation, but they did well to show up on the day, did well second half.
Exactly.
Let's get into Cheetahs versus Griquas.
Oh, yeah.
Weather conditions, terrible. If you think of Griquas, that hard, fast pitch down there in Kimberley, and then you think of what we were given on the day. You think of that yellow grass. And then you think of what we were given on the day here. A Cheetahs team, it was good to see Mnisi returning. Reno Smith was there as well. I haven't seen him for a while.
Yeah.
And weather for me on the day, terrible. Speckman getting robbed multiple times. Unfortunate for him. Tian Meyer, I felt stepped up in this one. I was critical of him last week, saying, his identity. What does he bring to this team? Yeah, we were both very critical of him, but it seems like, his ears were itching because he sorted himself out. I think 2 of the tries, he played a major hand. The one where they broke blindside, he put in that grabber for Speckman. And Disa and Sila wasn't taking any chances. Landed up robbing his own man of a try. But he was even apologetic. You could see he was just like, guys, I'm sorry, but
look, he was on the spot, and look, you can't blame the guy.
I don't blame him. I would have done the same thing.
He saw a try for the taking, and he took it. He made sure for the team. At the end of the day, it's a team game, so
you could feel someone here. If I didn't know who it was, he's like, I don't know if this is Speckman or this is.
Yeah. But look, overall, I think you mentioned Tian Meyer stepped up this past weekend. I think overall the whole Cheetahs team did, and for me, it looks like it's really about continuity for them in playing, because they had come off, I think, 2 weeks without playing, and they were below par, for 2 weeks in a row. And in this game, they stepped up. I mean, Blommetjies wasn't making mistakes. He wasn't dropping the balls, considering it was, it was wet. He was very effective under the high ball. You mentioned Nisi coming back, although he did have a bit of a...
His hands are as suspect as ever, but, given that, and then in a wet game, didn't come out with great results. But I mean, it's good to have him back, and he did show some good sparks. So I'm happy. I'm happy to see him back at this level.
Yeah, same here. And I think, look, overall from this game, it was just really the weather made it a leveler, but the Cheetahs, again, they were able to show their sort of the superior experience and overall
smarts. They were more tactically. They were more tactically aware. They were essentially giving the Griquas the ball in their own half and saying, "Let's see what you can do," knowing how tough the conditions were. So I mean, poor kicks, drop balls. There was that time where no one wanted to pick up the ball. They were just playing soccer for a while there. I thought there was a knock-on in that, and it led on to the maul, which Tian Meyer did a reverse back to Nisi for his try. I thought there might have been a knock-on there, but again, another Tian Meyer moment where, he has the vision to give it to Mnisi out wide. There were some guys who had good performances. I mean, Rudolph.
Yes.
He was always him and Fenter on the ball a lot around the breakdown. Bowen Fenter, he's a charging bull. He was putting in some hits, some good runs. That's
really was.
That's a Free State man. That's a Free State man.
From Bloemfontein, my man. From Bloemfontein. I think overall, the Cheetahs pack they were there to work, and they knew that they had to work because the past 2 weeks, as I mentioned, the past 2 weekends, they were not good. They were below their standard, I believe, and it was only a matter of time before they sort of found themselves, really, and you saw that in the way that, yes, in the beginning, it looked like it may be a tight game with the Griquas, having a say in it, but as you
the Griquas did well to stay in it, taking their points where they could. I mean, the first half they did well to just keep the scoreboard moving, but I mean, eventually they just pulled away.
Yeah, I think the Cheetahs were just, as you mentioned, street smart, but then again, they did well to take their chances when they were there. At the end of the day, that's what it's about, is that you put yourself in those positions, you have to take your chances, and that's what the Cheetahs did. The Griquas could count themselves, I wouldn't say unlucky in this game, but I'd just say unlucky from an overall Super Rugby Unlocked competition, because they looked like they were about to build something good and good momentum, and they lost a lot of players, and they looked to be rebuilding. And I think, they're still going to have a say this year, in the competition, in the Currie Cup that's coming up, so if I was them, I wouldn't be so disheartened. Yes, they lost to Big Brother, but it's Big Brother. It's going to happen. And Big Brother was also under pressure to show why, why they deserve to be considered in the conversation around playing in the pro rugby in the next season. Which I still think is still up for contention. It's really, I think the Currie Cup, there's a lot to play for. I think this is probably going to be one of the most interesting Currie Cups after the Super Rugby Unlocked, because there's just so much to play for, particularly for the smaller unions, but more so for a team like the Cheetahs, because it's a domestic competition, and they have a very strong record and history in the Currie Cup in recent times, especially, so it'll be good to see. But overall, from this game, I think it was just workmanlike. Wasn't exciting, really.
They started to play a bit more at the end there. I don't know if maybe the weather conditions were getting a bit better, but that the Haas try, they set move, went through the hands, some structure behind the back passes that they're known for, that late kick in, and then Speckman robbed again. But they started to show a bit of that at the end. For me, Griquas Berger is always going to be one of the standout players. He's lively. He's got those breaks. Same for De Beer for me. Standout. Cater as well is showing some value there. They've sorted out their lineouts. I saw bringing in Cameron Lindsay is also.
Yes.
I think he's added major value to them, whereas I think before he was at the Pumas on the bench. And then, I mean, you come into this and you sort out their whole line-out structure. He's done well. They've sorted out their defense for the most part. But, unlucky with the personnel changes. Unlucky. Rudolph kept going. That guy didn't look like he looked like he wanted to continue playing. 79th minute scoring that try. I was just like, this guy, he doesn't want to rest.
Look, Jandre Rudolph, for me, he's a very interesting potential prospect for the future. I think the sad thing is, with the Cheetahs being out of pro rugby as it is, the sad thing is is not being able to, or that we're not going to see him play against sort of the best in the world to see exactly where he measures up, because I think if you've watched him already from Varsity Cup days, he's always been immense. He was immense for Booker, even when he was at the Leopards. He's always stood out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Even
He's
when he
always
had his
stood out.
stint at the Bulls,
Yeah,
I think he was even captain for a brief time.
exactly. Which for me, I don't know why the Bulls had let him go, because I felt that he was a shoe-in for the Bulls culture and the way that they play.
It's not a
You
Jake
know,
White player.
yeah, unfortunately, but the cheaters benefit from that. Because, geez, he just works hard. Like I say, he's a very interesting prospect, and I'd like to see where he goes. In terms of his performances, particularly now with the Currie Cup coming up. Like I say, it's all to play for. This if there's been a time in the world rugby, in SA rugby, where there's everything to play for. Now is the time where I think even guys from the Griquas can have a shout at, guys from the Griquas, guys from the Pumas can have a shout at being considered for, a franchise team and potentially move on to higher honors. The opportunities are definitely there, and there's no better moment than now, But for me, I'm glad to see a guy like Opa Mahoje back. It's been a very long time, very, very long time without seeing him. So I was glad to see him back and playing. Hopefully he can stay injury free, find his form again, and we see him potentially back in the Springbok setup. But that's to be seen. But again, just Cheetahs did what they needed to do. They got the win, and they'll be happy with that. They'll be happy with the sort of the individual performances and efforts that were shown, and combined into the team effort. I think that's more than anything for them was finding that, because in the past 2 weeks, the 2 games that they'd lost recently just looked like they just slightly lost their way, but they're finding their radar again, and so they'll be a very tough prospect going forward.
Moving on to upcoming this week, Currie Cup beginning. Points are moving forward, but new competition. Friday night, Sharks versus the Pumas. We've got the Sharks team sheet. Pumas hadn't released one. I think with them, all those changes due to isolation.
Yeah.
I wonder how they'll turn up on the day. I think it will look better, and I think they will have more cohesion. But just going to that Sharks team, you've got Lubbock. He's back at 15 after Forming's injury. The loose forwards, they kept it a more traditional loose forward trio, which we had seen them switch to, before they were playing similar players in Pepsi and Noche together, where they reverted back to a more traditional loose trio. But this time they've got Richardson in for Fenta at 6. They've got JJ Van der Mesh for Boli at 7, and they've got Boli playing 8. That's interesting. Yeah. It is interesting.
That is interesting. No Pepsi and Noche on the bench as well. So I think that's an interesting selection of JJ Van der Mesh at 7. I actually think the reason why they have that is because they realize that they actually need him on the park, and for that physical dominance. And I feel like the coaches are not making the tough decisions, but you can almost understand what they're trying to do. If you had to look at the more sort of successful Shark sides or more effective Shark sides and packs, they always had a very, very bruising number 7. That strong ball carry. Somebody with great physical presence, and you're seeing that with Van der Mesh. You saw that when they had Willem Alberts at the Sharks, Jean Dazel as well. So I think they're trying to sort of find that balance. Then, of course, Boli, I rate him as well. And perhaps it's also just overall having 2 very hard men and knowing that Boli can actually also link up. I think Boli was, when he was at the Bulls actually earlier this season, I thought that he looked very, very, very good. Even when John Mitchell was still coaching the Bulls earlier, was it last season, and he had him in there. And I felt that he looked very good at 8 as well whenever he played. So I don't really I don't really think it's too much of a risk having him there at 8, with Pepsi out. But what you're going to get there is you're going to get guys that are going to work very hard. That's what I foresee with the loose forward trio that they've selected. Keeping in Hiring Andrews, I think it's because he runs the lineouts, and Thomas the Tank back. So I think overall they're looking for a pack that's going to physically try and dominate the Pumas in order to win their game, to set up the way that they want to play. Now is the time to see whether or not the Sharks can actually reignite the sort of form that they showed in Super Rugby in the early days of Super Rugby earlier this year, and really be electrifying. Sanele Nohamba, for me, solid. He just keeps on getting better, keeps on growing. Yeah, I'm just glad to see him still in the mix. Currie Bosch, hopefully we can see more from him outside of kicking. Yeah, look, that's all I'll say. then in the back line, you've got Marius Lowe, Jeremy Ward in the centers. I think, look, Marius Lowe he can be proud of his effort that he's put in, considering the type of player that he replaced in Andre Estes, and he's really given that effort. I think we're still yet to see anything convincing from a Jeremy Ward. Yao Pengler gets another chance, and I think this Currie Cup, I hope actually that he can get more his hands on the ball, so we can see his attacking prowess. Same on Mani Libok, Madosh as well. So all around, I think they're a very solid team. In terms of on paper, they look like a solid team.
For me, I like Zane Davids on the bench. I'm a big fan of Zane Davids. I don't necessarily know why he hasn't taken to 15s. I think maybe sort of struggling to find a position. I know in high school he was mixing it up between playing as a loose forward and a center. So maybe trying to make that decision is a difficult one. He's on the Sharks bench. I think he's on loan from the Sevens. I don't know if the Sharks is necessarily the place where you want to drop him off, to maybe get game time and maybe find himself, especially with their loose forwards, sort of the mix that going on there, where you've got a guy like Richardson playing 6, moving to hooker, coming back. You've got the Noche thing. You've got Pepsi. It's a lot is up in the air.
Yeah,
throwing him into the situation, and I just hope he gets some game time. You've got Spoon Corsi on the bench as well, Noche on the bench, as he said. Those three, I feel like, will provide big impact later on in the game.
They have to. They have no choice. They have no choice. Otherwise we're gonna have them on the next show.
And for me, I've got Sharks by 15. How are you gonna call it?
Look, Sharks are my guys. I'll say I'm gonna give the Pumas some leeway here, and then I'll say Sharks by 10.
By 10, okay. Feeling generous. Griquas versus the Lions. Griquas versus the Lions here. No team sheet.
I'm giving the Lions.
Yet. Lions is winning this one by 20. So
yeah, I'm giving the Lions. I'm giving the Lions. I'm sorry. I even before we got on, I'd already made up my mind. I said, Lions and Kimberley.
That hard pitch, that's made for running. And the thing is, they both play that running rugby. When you're fighting with the same weapon, fighting with the same weapon here. But these ones, it's higher caliber. They're gonna finish them.
They're gonna finish them for sure. I'm giving it to the Lions as well. Say you say about 20. I say I'm gonna be further and I say 30 the Lions.
But I think I think it'll be probably one of the more entertaining games of the weekend. I mean, you look at this past weekend with the weather, Bulls game, not that exciting. Already Sharks, Pumas, Griquas, Lions, these look like more exciting games. So hopefully they are. Yes. And to what will probably be the most entertaining is Province versus Bulls. Got Kolisi back in training. They've sent their spies down and they've identified him in training. They haven't said whether he'll be playing or not. They said that's classified information. They'll keep us guessing. Look, they're riding high after, the last game that they played. Things seem to come together for them. Willemse seems to be catching some form. Galant's been their player this season. Jantjies seem to catch some form. They have that man back, Kolisi, the man that was named as part of SA's most stylish couple. Questionable, but I love it. He might be back. And if he's back, I'm going Province by 5. I think that they're going to pull this one out of the fire. And I have faith in them. It's down in the Western Cape. And I think maybe the Bulls, they would have got too drunk last week celebrating. Going down to Cape Town, and I think it's set up for a bit of a shock. It's set up to change the fortunes, and it's set up for Willemse and Jantjies to make statements there. Because also you look at this. For me, whenever I see Province team versus a Bulls team, my immediate thought process goes to Springbok selection.
Yes.
My immediate. If there's any game in SA Rugby that goes to that thought process, it's this game. I immediately think of box selection. You've got guys that are playing each other, and this is what's going to be written down on paper in front of the guys making the selection. These are the papers that they're going to say, but on this date, this guy did this, performed poorly against him when the heat was on. So I think it'll be vital. It'll be vital. I mean, look at Schikkeling. He's going up against Nokia and the boys, Jason Jakin and the boys.
This is the game.
Yeah, this is the game. Up front, you've got Nyakani facing Spicy Plum. It's gonna be heating up there. It's gonna be heating. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, Kodas, you've taken words right out of my mouth. This is the game. This is the game where, from the Western Province point of view, those players, it's the game where now they need to underline that they've sorted themselves out. They've identified how they want to play, and they can impose their game plan. As you said, the head-to-heads, the Yankees, the Willemses, the challenge, I think, yes, up front, definitely. That's where it's going to be, because right there you've got majority Springbok pack, if Kolisi's back, in the Springbok front row in the Western Province. And then you have, a splattering of Springboks in the Bulls pack as well. For me, it's going to be a titanic sort of battle up front. And whoever wins that battle up front is the one that's going to take this game, For me, it's too close to call. You go Province by 5. I'm gonna say Bulls by 5. I just have a feeling that Jake White's got John Dobson's number, I believe, and I think the Bulls will take it by 5. It'll be
Dobson
tight.
Is praying this week. He's praying this week. Don't worry. He's praying this week that something can happen. Something can fall his way. The center.
Rumor has it he called Bushiri.
Yeah, I made a donation. That plane. Maybe he paid for some fuel on that plane. I don't know. But looking, you've got Van Staden, you've got Kolisi, you've got Van Zyl and Jantjies. They're in that mix there for second place. Springbok scrum half. You've got the centers. The centers, I feel, it's going to be a real test now. It's going to be a real test for Hendricks and Hans to say, you guys can operate off guys going forward. But now, if you're not going forward, can you operate against a guy like Rickers, big Rickers?
Yes.
Dan Duplessis, can you operate against them? So we'll see how it goes. So we'll see if once again Jake White changes his center selections because it's too hot in the kitchen. But
Yeah, we'll see. But I
we'll
don't
see
think he
how
will.
it goes. I don't
I don't think
think
he
he will
will.
either.
I don't think he will. But it goes both ways, you know, because it's a thing of, you know, if the Bulls are going to be under pressure from a forward perspective, you know, can they do they have a sort of plan B? Can they handle the pressure in terms of particularly their backline, your Hendricks or your Stedman Khans? Can they be inventive? And it's going to be the same for the Stormers, particularly the halfback pairing, is what they can do. The reason why I think the Bulls will take it is because the Bulls' kicking game seems to be just a bit better, you know, in that aspect. And I know they'll go to the kicking game, you know, to get them out of jail. So let's leave it there. It's gonna be a tight one.
Yeah,
It's
no,
gonna be a tight one.
I like this one. I like this one.
Mm.
And that's it. That's it from us. Unless you've got any closing remarks.
One more. I watched the Australia-Argentina game on the weekend. Tri Nations, you know, those guys. It was a difficult watch because it just seems so very cagey. Like, you know, Australia for me, Australia on the right track. They just right now they're still looking for that killer blow. You know, they haven't found their combinations to land the punches. You know, they were close. You know, I think the center pairing, the young center pairing that they have, Hunter Paisami, Jordan Patea, those
Pratia,
guys are very
that's a
he's
play.
explosive.
That's a
That guy's dangerous. Oh my goodness, he's very dangerous.
Patia, right? That's a play.
He's very dangerous, you know, and I think you can see they miss the old head and cool head of a Matt Tumua to sort of drive them around from 12 or even at 10. You know, they pack. I just see them growing. You know, I see them using Taniela Tupo more often as a ball carrier, distributor of the ball because he has that ability, you know, and he's mobile enough. It's just, I think I was let down more by Argentina because they didn't show the same passion that they showed against the All Blacks, you know, when they won against the All Blacks. And it's a big question mark there for me is, again, backing it up. You know, a draw for me, a draw is like a loss, you know, and particularly after you beat the All Blacks, you know, you'd expect to at least win against Australia, you know, and yeah, it was difficult to watch. Again, I think just some questionable decisions from a refereeing perspective. You know, loose forward trios, they cancelled each other out, but the Argentinian loose forwards were not as immense as they were against the All Blacks. So I think it's going to be interesting now, this final round that's coming up with Argentina and New Zealand. New Zealand, they really have to prove a point. They're under the most pressure. It's going to be interesting this weekend, you know, and even with that game, I'd say, look, it's probably going to be very tight. I'd say, you know, New Zealand to sneak it by 3. You know,
Yeah, I
that's
think so. Also
that's
for
my
them, I mean,
observation.
to lose back to back, same team, I don't see it. So
Yeah,
I also go All Blacks with that one.
yeah. But that was my last 2 cents that I wanted to add in there.
And that's it. That's it from us this week.
Yes,
Like, share,
sir.
subscribe.
Mm-hmm.
Watch some rugby this weekend because it's heating up. Currie Cup, great competition. And that's it. Cheers, guys. Thanks for watching.
Yes. Thank you.